I was just wondering, I've also read your book and you said you experienced discrimination there, but I was wondering, is there like still a big population of North Korean people who stay in South Korea, or do you think the majority of them defect?
Mostly they are in China, captured.
Okay.
So majority of North Koreans are in China, and they end up in 4 places as a North Korean defector in China. One is you end up in organ harvesting. So they buy you and take your organs out and discard you. Second is you are bought in these brothels. They rape you until you die. Usually you die in 6 months. And then third place is where a town of men buy a girl, ship in and buy a girl, and then they rotate and she dies out. And last place is sex chat rooms, where they lock these girls indoor and they make them to perform sex acts in front of the camera.
Brace yourself, because what you're about to witness isn't just another video. It's a gut punch so intense it will completely shatter the comfortable little bubble that so many spoiled young Americans like me are hopelessly trapped inside. This isn't your average wake-up call. It's a full-scale, no-holds-barred reality bomb, detonated straight from the fearless lips of North Korean defector Yeonmi Park. Watching her story unfold hit me like a tidal wave, a sudden rush of overwhelming gratitude for every basic thing we casually and mindlessly take for granted every single day. And it's not just me. The students at Atlantic University were absolutely rocked to their core, because Yeonmi didn't just share a story, she ripped the suffocating veil off the world's most brutal, savage, and merciless communist dictatorship with a rawness so piercing it cut right through to the bone. What you're about to see isn't just eye-opening. It's a full-throttle, heart-stopping revelation that challenges everything you thought you knew about freedom, privilege, and the true cost of oppression. Don't even think about blinking. Watch this explosive clip now before I break down the jaw-dropping, earth-shattering truth that lies beneath it all.
Hi, I'm Alana. So since you've been in America, what is one thing that you think Americans take for granted that you love?
It's choice.
Choice.
I don't think Americans understand what a unique thing to have a choice. Choice to where you live, what you do, who you marry, what you even eat. When you go to restaurants, you have at least dozens of them to choose from. In North Korea, we don't have cookbook because nobody can afford the ingredients to make different kinds of food. So I think that's what I see, that Americans don't understand how unique the way of life is here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alejandra. I'm from Venezuela, and I experienced not the same scenario, but obviously the dictator over there is a friend of Kim Jong-un, and I just have a question because the way I see the generation now is that they're so indoctrinated that there's pretty much no way to revert that damage that the left have caused. And do you think any possibility that we can change that in the near future, maybe?
Yeah, thank you. I definitely see that. I think, like people from Venezuela, Cuba, or Iran, and North Korea, none of them want to live under socialism. That's why we escaped. And all these people living in democracy, they want to bring the socialism to this country. And the reason why I think they think that way is because of the American education system became a huge propaganda tool. It became an indoctrination camp, like North Korean schoolrooms. And I think once we realize what is getting into our children's minds, and also we realize how American media became liars, and they became a propaganda tool as well. Once we see that, and this hijacking of these big institutions, then I think we can change that. But first is definitely education, that our children getting brainwashed, and my son is too. I worry about that every day, and people really don't understand how bad it got in this country right now.
Oh, and seriously, what did you expect? Today's education system is basically soaked in Marxist ideology, and the numbers don't lie. Liberal profs in the US outnumber conservatives by a staggering 12 to 1. Now, don't get me wrong, no one's actually worshipping North Korean-style dictatorships here. The real issue? A massive misunderstanding of how free markets and capitalism actually create the wealth these students enjoy every day. Check this. Last year's poll showed nearly 43% of Americans aged 18 to 34 are fully on board with socialism being the perfect economic system. That's not a coincidence. This obsession with socialism, it's fueled by glossy, fairy tale versions of Nordic countries and a relentless demonization of capitalism that floods college campuses. And let's be real, young adults struggling financially see capitalism as the villain behind their struggles, because cold economic competition looks like the monster under their bed. Yeah, America's capitalism isn't perfect. Corporate greed and cronyism are huge problems, but the answer isn't to rip up the entire system. It's to unleash markets even more, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But here's the kicker. This youthful enchantment with socialism is rooted in two brutal truths. One, a total blindness to how the wealth and freedom they enjoy come from the fierce individualism that built this country. And two, a shocking lack of gratitude for how hard it is for most countries worldwide to even get close to what we have here. Maybe it takes someone like me, fresh from the other side, to slap some real perspective into these students' heads.
Hi, my name is Danny. You talked a lot about human rights activism. What's a good way for a college student to get involved with that? What's a good first step?
Yes, first step is do not join the United Nations. I mean, they are the biggest, most useless organization I've ever seen in my lifetime. I'm sorry, but I have spoke at UN multiple times and complete degenerates. I'm so sorry. They let North Korea, China, Saudi Arabia, they let them decide who are the human rights violators. This is a joke, right? It's a show. So when you want to become a human rights activist, I think it's really important to find your own path and not following this mainstream. And BLM people say they are like fighting for human rights too, right? So it's not at this point embarrassing to even say that, because human rights got hijacked by so many social justice warriors. They're like, what are you actually fighting for? So yeah, I think don't look for big institutions, and it needs a lot of innovation. So think about it as a business. We need to innovate these NGO spaces as well.
Now here's a fresh angle you won't hear on every corner. As the world tears itself apart from centralized powers, real human rights activism has to break free from the grip of big shot NGOs, because honestly, most of them lean hard left and have agendas that water down the true meaning of human rights. Look at climate change campaigns or global economic giants like Amnesty International and Oxfam. They're pushing the same progressive economic ideas that dominate Western politics, which ends up twisting human rights into something unrecognizable. Enter Yeonmi Park, a living, breathing blueprint for the kind of raw, decentralized activism that actually moves the needle. She's not tied to any NGO or UN puppet strings. Instead, she's weaponizing her story, unleashing the brutal truth about North Korea's horrors into the global spotlight, and that's the most powerful act of service she could offer her people. But it doesn't stop there. Yeonmi's voice is doing a massive favor for American students who are starving for the real global perspective they've been missing. Time and again, studies prove young Americans are stuck in a bubble, clueless about how their country actually fits into the world stage. When they finally hear stories like hers, it hits them. The values and freedoms they've been quick to bash. They're an impossible dream for millions worldwide. Yet, here's the tragic irony. America's education system, which should be the country's intellectual powerhouse, has devolved into a propaganda machine. Instead of broadening minds, it fuels resentment in young people against the very systems that built this nation's greatness, all while serving up a narrow, blinkered worldview that ignores the bigger picture. And that, my friend, is the greatest betrayal of all.
I was just wondering, I've also read your book, and you said you experienced discrimination there. But I was wondering, is there like still a big population of North Korean people who stay in South Korea, or do you think the majority of them defect? But I know, as you said, it's a very small amount who actually make it to America. So if not America, are they just staying in South Korea or going elsewhere?
Oh, mostly they are in China, captured.
Okay.
So majority of North Koreans are in China, and they end up in 4 places as a North Korean defector in China. One is you end up in organ harvesting. So they buy you and take your organs out and discard you. Second is you are bought in these brothels. They rape you until you die. Usually you die in 6 months. And then third place is where a town of men buy a girl, ship in and buy a girl, and then they rotate and she dies out. And last place is sex chat rooms, where they lock these girls indoor and they make them to perform sex acts in front of the camera, and then for that these girls get fed and get hidden place. So this is happening, and this is a thing. I am here because there are, as I said, 300,000 of them are trapped in China and don't know if there's any life for them. And I've been trying to spread this message in America, in the land of the free. And one of the producers last year in Hollywood wanted to make a movie out of my story from my first book. And he sent me a movie script, and he says, China was my promised land. When I got to China, they gave me protection and refugee. I asked him, what the heck are you talking about? Right? And he said, this is the only way we can make a movie about North Korea in Korean Hollywood, by lying about China. And that's why no Michelle Obama or Mark Clooney or none of these people would sit down with me, talk to me, because they all making money out of.
You ever notice how this isn't just about the left swallowing collectivist and cultural Marxist ideology like candy? It's way bigger. Countries like China are playing the same game, bending the knee to those very narratives. If Trump's hardline China rhetoric made some people squirm, then bowing down to China's own cultural and media spin isn't any better. It's downright dangerous. Look at the wild string of moments we've seen recently that prove this. Remember when NBA star Dwight Howard had to grovel and apologize to China? Why? Because during a playoff promo, he dared to call Taiwan a country. A fact that's official US policy, but apparently a crime in Beijing's eyes. Chinese state-run mouthpiece Global Times demanded a public apology like it was some kind of treason. Put the pieces together, and what you see is a nation losing the very core values that once made it a global powerhouse, losing the guts, the backbone, and the fearless spirit that drove it forward. But here's the silver lining. If voices like mine keep delivering the brutal reality check to younger generations, maybe, just maybe, we can still pull this ship back on course before it's too late. If you want more eye-opening truths and hard-hitting stories that cut through the noise, hit that subscribe button and stay locked in.